If you ski Utah in the Wasatch Mountains, you're going to hear the term persistent weak layer, especially if you ski the backcountry. And persistent weak layer is basically layers of weak snow buried in the snowpack, and this snow typically has snowed and fell onto the ground months earlier in the season. So we're talking about snow that falls in October, November, and snow that maybe sits on the ground for a while in warm weather. And this snow I always say it kind of rots away, but basically there's a temperature gradient between the ground temperature and the air temperature, and it causes this snow to just break down. And everybody's seen this kind of snow. It's kind of snow that just kind of crumbles in your hand. It's kind of snow that you can't make a snowball with, and it's just not sticky. So when you get more snow layers on top of it, it becomes that weak layer buried underneath. And it's that weak layer that the snow on top of it will slide down and cause an avalanche. And this is important for us in Utah because this is a problem that we deal with from, the beginning of the season till about February, depending on the year, depending on how much snow we get. Later in the year, it tends to heal up. Whether you're a backcountry skier or a skier in bounds, because even if you're a skier in bounds and you're sitting there waiting in line wondering why your favorite run hasn't opened up yet, a lot of times it's because of persistent weak layer. Now, why would I choose to come over here to the sunny side, the south side facing side of Little Cottonwood Canyon, to talk about weak layers of snow? To answer that, let's play out a little scenario. So let's say next week or so, it snows 3 feet of snow. Okay? And enough snow that, if you wanted, you'd come up here and hike and go skiing. Well, if it snowed 3 feet of snow here on this grassy hill, it'd be relatively safe. You're not going to really have to worry about avalanche problems. But if we turn around and look at the north-facing side of the canyon, you're seeing there's a bunch of snow, and that snow fell, a week ago or a week or two ago, and that since melted on the south-facing. But you can see up, especially in the high elevations, there's quite a bit of snow up there. And that is your persistent weak layer in the making. And what happens to that snow is it gets weak, it gets faceted, and any more snow layers that fall on top of that snow is at risk of sliding. And that's where you get these avalanche problems later in the year from snow that fell in October. And for someone who maybe is new here or coming to the Wasatch for the first time, and maybe you don't even know that exists, maybe you don't even understand that there's a difference between that side of the canyon and this side of the canyon. And maybe, in a couple months from now, you'll look at an avalanche forecast, and the avalanche forecast will say a completely different story for the south facing than it does on the north, northwest, northeast facing. And this is why. This is why there's such a big difference. And let's say, again, that we get, a 3 feet dump of snow here in the next week or whatever, a couple weeks. And then that snow sits for several weeks. And maybe that snow doesn't fully melt here on the south facing side. And it stays. And it stays for a period of time. Then we have a whole different story. Then we have a whole story that says we're going to have persistent weak layer all around the compass. North facing, south facing, it's not going to matter. So these are the kind of things that we look at as skiers to try and be safe in the backcountry. It's also things that we look at if we're a resort skier and we want to have more compassion for ski patrol and compassion for the resorts for being a little bit slow to open up terrain. Because as you can see, that's Alta, that's Snowbird, and there's a lot of snow over there. And that snow is going to cause ski patrol problems here in the next couple of months when they're trying to open High Wrestler and when they're trying to open Baldy and Ballroom and Baldy Shoulder, because there's a lot of snow over there. And those weak layers make a really big difference for those guys when they're trying to do their work. And when we get later in the season, there's a big fat snowpack on top of this all, and there's a lot of snow compaction. It heals up that weak layer, and that weak layer tends to kind of settle out, so we don't have to worry about it. But that doesn't happen for many months in the future. So after looking at these scenarios, what can we say? We can say paying attention to snowfall, even if it's in October, means something. And moving forward from now into November and December, paying attention to these snowfalls can really help you make good decisions in the backcountry. So again, let's say we get some more snowfall. Let's say we get another foot, and maybe it'll melt off again on the south side. It's not going to melt off over on the north side. So let's say it snows another foot, and then it doesn't snow for another couple of weeks. And let's say it snows another foot, and then it doesn't snow for another couple of weeks. And you end up with multiple persistent weak layers over on the north side. And that's when it gets really tricky and really dangerous in the backcountry. And you really have to make good decisions because you have many of these weak snow layers deep in the snowpack that, maybe you're skiing in January, but these are layers that are falling now in October, November, December that you're going to have to deal with then. I'm going to show you an area right up here, and I'll kind of zoom in on that. But this is a perfect example where you can see a little bit of snow. Most of the snow has melted up there, and I can't tell you how many times. Let's play out the scenario. Let's say it snows a foot and it melts a lot, but maybe up in there a lot of the snow stays. So if you're skiing in December, after we get some more snowfall, you're going to want to ski, you're going to want to choose lines that are over here more in the true south facing point of this mountain. Because if you go and say, it's really tempting, you're like, oh, that all that snow up there under those cliffs look really nice. I'm going to go, take a few turns under there. But there's a persistent weak layer that exists under those cliffs that doesn't exist over here on the south facing. But how would you even know that unless you're up here kind of paying attention throughout when all these early storms happen? And there was an avalanche that happened, a close call avalanche with a kid who had just moved here. And exactly that happened, where there was snow up under these cliffs. There was no snow over here. He came up here, skied, had a great day, but then he, decided to go ski underneath those cliffs because that snow looked really good, and he set off, a 2 or 3 foot deep avalanche on that weak layer. So as we're kind of seeing here, a lot of avalanche safety has to do with just paying attention and paying attention to the right things. Sometimes just being around early in the season, being around this area in October and November pays off later in the season. Just being able to see what happens to the snow early can really tell you a lot of what's going to happen later in the season. And you can also see that there's certain spots where history repeats itself. If you see that it snowed and then it got warm after, you know that it's going to melt out in certain areas and it's going to stay in certain areas. Even if it gets really warm, that north-facing stuff on the north-facing side of the mountain, that's not going to melt. Sun angle's too low at this point in the year. Now, right now, we're in late October, and it could still get really warm. I mean, in the valley, we can still get temperatures in the 80s. I'm not saying that's going to happen this year, but even if that does happen, it does not mean that all the snow is going to melt up here. You're still going to have those weak, faceted layers over on the north-facing side, as we can see. So use that to your advantage. Pay attention to things like that. It'll help you make good decisions later in the winter. I hope this video helps explain a little bit about the avalanche danger we have here in Utah. This by no means explains everything. Avalanche danger is extremely complex. There's lots of layers that happen within the snowpack that causes avalanches throughout the year. This is just one of many aspects of avalanche danger that we have to deal with. But it's an important one. And like I said, it just has a lot to do with paying attention to the world around you, paying attention to what's going on, and being observant. Being observant helps you so much. I don't want to oversimplify things. I don't want to make it sound like if you stick to south-facing terrain that just means it's safe all the time, because that's not true either. There's going to be a lot of snowfall from here until the rest of the season, and a lot of things can happen. So it's really good to pay attention to the avalanche report. Utah Avalanche Center does an incredible job. They put out a ton of videos, they put out a ton of information, and it can't be ignored. All that information is totally valid. A lot of that information will echo what I'm talking about. I hope we can all have a safe year this year. We all just want to have fun out skiing powder. That's why we ski Utah, because we love skiing powder. So let's all be safe, read the reports, pay attention, have fun. All right, that's it for this week's video. Thanks for dropping in.